Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Jerri Walker, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. And as we have done on other Mondays, we have heard unscripted stories. We're going to hear another story this evening from my good friend, Nick Anderson, who just this week celebrated 10 years of sobriety. Mm-hmm. And that is 10 years of one day at a time, isn't it, Nick?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Tell us your story.
Well, I guess it goes back to being brought up in a family, a Royal Naval family, and that doesn't mean much to people, but the whole family just floated on alcohol.
Okay.
So my parents were really functioning alcoholics, and I grew up in that. And then through rugby, that sort of continued the trend, and so I'd been a drinker. But then in 2010, it got worse and worse, and it was due to stress. It was due to stress and a marriage breaking up and the business going badly. It was just a combination.
The perfect storm.
And as all alcoholics know, there's nothing like a good drink to make things worse. And I ended up trying to take my own life, and I ended up in a rehab facility. And that's when things started to turn around. I didn't realize how much it was turning around at that point. And this was a time when a lady who was in this facility because she was very depressed liked to play a guitar, and she liked to sing hymns. So it was a very hot summer. We all sat outside, and this gentleman I was telling you just before we started recording, I couldn't remember this guy's name. 6'7", African American. He was from the West Congo.
Okay.
He was very, very dark skin, and he was basso profundo. So when he started singing, your feet sort of tingled. But he kept prodding me and saying, "You can sing," and the point about that was, up to that point, I hadn't sung. Now, you know and I know that I sing in the choir and I've done solos and stuff, so how was that gap filled? And the psychiatrists that was creating a plan for me to leave the facility, we said, well, obviously you've got to get away from people that drink. You've got to change your life. And I thought about singing, and I think about the second week out of the facility, I went to Resurrection Life, which was a church that I'd been there before. And Resurrection Life is a mega church, so the sanctuary holds 4,000 people. And I found myself in 3 weeks standing on bleachers in front of television cameras with a few people around me, obviously, but broadcasting to 70 million people.
Oh my word.
And this sort of upwelling of music sort of buoyed me forward
So I'd
in
like
a way
to
I hadn't anticipated.
I'd like to stop right here and roll it back a little bit. When you first went in to Rio, who were the people? Who was the village? Was there a voice? Was there one person that really came alongside you and made the difference in you stepping into rehab and into recovery?
Well, it was a friend, Bob, who got me to the facility. He just put me in the car and said, "We're going," and so he was instrumental in me getting the help that I needed. I think my psychiatrist, my ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, was also instrumental in helping. So there's a collection of people, and that gentleman I referred to was indirectly but directly involved in putting something back in my life which replaced the drink. Well, there's many other factors, but it was a plank to start building a new boat.
Well, because I think sometimes, and we may have someone listening right now that may know someone who really needs that intervention or that help, that I'm going to pick that, but they don't know for sure whether they should. They question that. Well, I don't want to, invade privacy and those kind of things. But in your case, thank God somebody did.
Well, it was a very extreme form of getting help, but
Yes.
when I left the facility, then I went to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
And that was something that continued for quite a long period of time. And going to those meetings and meeting people, and there's just an unvarnished honesty about those groups. Nobody judges you. There's a 12-step program, and I think you meet, but the thing that I found most useful was there was people there with 20 years sobriety and saying they knew friends who had that sort of length of time and they thought they could start drinking again. And they went down even further than the first time they tried to recover. And that was a very salutary piece of learning for me, that I'm an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and no amount of rationalization can say, yeah, I can have a drink. So when we went through that period, then a friend of mine, a business partner, Lee Hammett, said, look, why don't you get yourself out to Idaho? Because you were wondering about how I got to Idaho. And he said, well, come and get your head sorted out.
Okay.
And Lee's very direct approach, and basically I stayed on his ranch and we herded cattle and did various things, and some people will know Gay Jeffrey, who was the minister at the United Methodist Church in Blackfoot, who was a great help, and that started. But the thing that really brought it up short, there was one time when I had a drink, and then on December the 8th, Lee said, if you drink, you can't stay here. And so it was that final sort of push to keep going to the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. But by then I was in the Jason Lee Memorial United Methodist Church in Blackfoot.
Okay.
And was in their choir and was singing, and people said, have you been trained to count? I said, count? What's counting to do? So you can see where I started from, but it was from that point that I then got involved with Jesus Christ Cowboy Church.
Oh, okay.
Which is churches which are basically in horse barns or buildings on the side of horse barns. And I was singing, and somebody said, we'd love to hear you sing, can you sing? And this is the sort of Southern Baptist tradition of singing. And so I found myself up on the stage. And by that stage, I'd met Diane. You talk about people who are the planks to build the boat. The keel was Diane. And meeting Diane, and I just blessed the day I met her, really. Her love of music, she loved singing, we both did. This was after her husband had passed. And she'd always wanted to move back to Boise. So she'd been born in Payette, which is, for people who don't know, it's just on the Oregon border. And so she had more relatives over this side of the state. And we moved on May the 1st. And the story about why I'm here today was really, we met Lisa Dawson at the Wallowa Choir Camp, which some people may know near Joseph. There's a United Methodists camp there. And we met her singing at a choir camp. And she then contacted us and said, oh, Kathy Abend is getting ordained at the cathedral. Would you like to be part of the pickup choir? So we came, sang for the first time with the choir, and there's the corridor just down there, I can remember it to this day. We looked at each other and went, home.
So you knew that this was where you needed to be. Now, you had mentioned right at the beginning how drinking was just a part of your family. It was just what you did. Has it made any difference in the relationships with other members of your family, or have they totally accepted your path towards sobriety?
I moved out from UK to the States in '96, and my family was dysfunctional. You know, my two brothers and I said that when Mum and Dad got divorced, it was 15 years too late.
Okay.
It was a very fractured environment, and so it wasn't so much the drink as other issues that led to the family being fragmented. Now I'm pleased to say my daughter and I have re-established a good relationship.
Wonderful.
And so we Zoom every week and that sort of thing. And from Diane's family, they've been just great, accepted me, and you know, I've grown to feel part of their family. So
Yes.
that's been good.
Is there something that you do every day or that you are aware of that you have done in these past 10 years that you know makes a difference? You've mentioned music, certainly, as that has been a huge help in filling you up and giving you purpose, actually, as well. Is there anything else that you think of that, you know, you just remind yourself something every day, or a mantra, or...
I think the mantra that immediately comes to mind is there's nothing that a drink can't make worse.
That's okay.
And that's one thing that occurs to me. The other thing about singing is when we came to Boise, then I started having singing lessons. And that was governed by the fact that my father loved Italian arias. So rather ambitiously, for somebody of limited ability to actually sing some of these arias, was the start of our journey, which had many twists and turns to it. But essentially, having Paul Aiken as my voice teacher, and then some of the teachers as well, have really contributed to me now in terms of giving back and coming to regard my faith as an important part of my life rather than just an ancillary part of it. Was during the summer for I think 4 or 5 years, we've offered we, being Diane and myself, is to go and sing to local churches when the choirs typically have vacation.
Great.
So we've got 10, 12 churches that we've regularly sung at. And in fact, Brenda Seen phoned me in September and said, "We really miss hearing your voice. Would you like to do some recordings for us?" And so she selected some songs from a list, hymns that we sang. And that's part of the faith, and the singing is about spiritual singing. I love to hear people sing contemporary music and things like that, but to me, somebody said people who sing pray twice. And that sticks with me in terms of, and now in this environment, I miss the corporate singing. I miss the fellowship and the love that people have in the choir and doing. You were just talking about Christmas at the Cathedral. This weekend would be crazy because we'd be doing Christmas at the Cathedral. So it's church being part of a community that is not focused on drink, and it's about singing, which is really, I know how I recovered.
Right.
And it's funny because my younger brother, Jonathan, was a narcotics addict, and he found weightlifting. And I remember many years after he started and was clean, and I said, "Are you still lifting weights?" And he's pretty, what we would call a chunky monkey. I mean, this is really a well-built guy. And he said, "If I didn't lift weights, I'd go back on the narcotics."
Really?
And I sort of equated that with my singing.
Okay, so music is a lifeline in essence.
Very much so.
For you. And you started a wonderful list of things to do, and I'm wondering if there might be somebody listening who is really struggling, and especially I would think during the pandemic, the isolation that is happening, and just how weird our lives have gotten, that the temptation is, even if, sobriety has been there in their past, that it might be even greater now. What advice or words of wisdom can you give to people that really are struggling?
Some people will be familiar with the title of the role of sponsor.
Yes.
I think that's a really important thing to have, that if you've got a good sponsor, that's somebody who's most often a fellow addict, recovering narcotics or whatever, and somebody, you start having the thought that you can go back to drugs, drink, whatever, pick up the damn phone.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone.
Yes.
And talk to somebody who's got half an inkling of what you're going through. Being on your own, uncommunicative, not reaching out for people is a recipe for that bottle of vodka a day, which is what I did.
Okay.
I mean, you just don't want to go back there.
Yes.
Now I have difficulty watching television programs where there is a lot of drink involved.
That's difficult.
It makes me feel, which is a good thing. It's one of the good things about staying sober. But I have no illusions that I can't take my eye off the ball.
Okay.
It's not like I want to. After 10 years, you don't think about drink all the time. There are just one or two times when you get thirsty after a long hike. And thank God for zero alcohol beer, because there's some really good ones now. So a real thirst quencher. But other than that, people are very gracious, and they say, well, do you mind if I have a drink while you're... I said, no, it doesn't worry me at all.
Okay.
It's just my own chemistry and metabolism that...
But even after 10 years, there's, that you still keep all of your support and all of your mantra, everything intact.
Oh, yeah.
And that is so important, isn't it?
Yeah. You and sometimes you will obviously at different times not have the mantra to the front of your mind. And there's just occasionally you just go, hey, hang on. And in fact, Diane's son, Jeff, is a recovering NA addict of 25 years now.
Oh, wow.
So he often gives me have you been to a meeting? I get the grill from him, which is really good. I love the guy. But, I think that the thing is, if you're silent, sat at home, not talking to anybody, that's a recipe for going back and pick up the phone. There's always somebody who will listen. And one of the reasons of doing this is to say, call me.
Exactly.
If you don't have anyone, call me, because I know how valuable it is to walk a path that somebody else has walked before you, and that's the community. That's what's valuable about AA. That non-judgmental environment but people in those groups don't stand any BS. It's not kumbaya. It's like. And you'll get challenged, if somebody's not being honest with themselves, because that's the important thing about recovery. It's being honest with yourself. It's nobody else's fault. You can't, the excuser-meter can't start running again. Well, I've had a long day, I think I'll have a glass of wine. Well, yeah, that's okay for some people, but for me it ended up as a liter of wine. And then vodka. And I tell you, you have times when you can't remember what you did. And those things come back to sort of say that's what holds you in check. But I think the other thing is, it's being with a community like this church, that people know me now. And I know if I had any difficulty at all, I'd be stuck to think, now who would I phone first? It's like there's so many people that have so much love in their heart and That's why this community is great.
Yes, community. And even in the COVID times, staying connected, even if it is, like you said, through Zoom or through social media.
Anything.
Pick up the phone call, pick up the phone, make the call.
Yeah.
It is so important, even now, probably more than ever, because of how we are needing to live, to be safe. So Nick, it's been really great to hear your story. I've known you for a long time, but until I saw the Facebook of your sobriety, I did not know that you were celebrating. And so I just thank you so much. I think anytime, we call this Unscripted Stories, and I think anytime we tell our story and we know someone is listening, we can begin to heal. And so what you've done this evening is to maybe reach out to someone who just needed to hear that. And so if you are that person, regardless if you are thinking of picking up that drink or you're just so lonely, you're so frightened that it might happen, please feel free to call the church. Nick has graciously offered his phone number as well. We will get you connected.
Sure.
So important to know that you are a part of something bigger and feel that sense of community the minute you pick up the phone. So again, Nick, thank you so much. Is there anything else that now that you've sat there for a minute, you go, oh, I really wish I would have said this?
No, I just smile at the number of people who sent me messages on my anniversary.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I don't know, just so many people, and many people I don't know that well.
Yes.
And many people I do, and
And
special time.
yes, exactly. And it still is one day at a time, isn't it?
Oh yeah, can't take your eye off the ball.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again when we get together. Thank you.